Okay, remember that remember that corporate white supremacists, Jewish supremacists, and LGBT supremacists are changing my voice to their extreme shame. I am not gay. I would never be gay. God's spirit doesn't allow for the LGBT spirit to exist in it. So people who come into this country face a similar problem as people who are in this country. On the right wing, you have white supremacists and Jewish supremacists and LGBT people who are in the closet trying to take away their rights and enslave them and sexually control them. On the left wing, you have a bunch of LGBT people who are fanatically pushing a certain line, and quite often through Freemason types, quite often through gender feminists, quite often through various odd-looking people. Because so many of the elite bloodlines are inbred and odd and autistic, what have you, they've taken action in regards to changing the way people look in their videos and their pictures, and doing something with technology and fumes and poisons to change the way they look in person. And what they've done is very sick. If they don't think that that's what's happened here, talk to them and say, hey, if you don't think it's what happened here, if it is what happened, or if that was to happen, what do you think the punishment should be for the people who did it, who caused it to happen? And take a good look at them while they respond. I ought to make it clear to you that it's going on. So Newscum had some rhetoric. He was going back and forth with Donald Trump. But no one is presenting any plans that would really change the power dynamic, the social dynamic, and allow for freedoms, etc. The mayor of LA, Karen Bass, is a black feminist, and she did not seem to reach out to the dozens of cities in Southern California to send her more police officers. Though the chief of the LAPD is said to have asked for more assistance subtly otherwise, before the sheriff and highway patrol are said to have come in force, she said that the National Guard would just escalate the situation. This could have been a political move by the left, and if they are capable of that, why is it so hard to insist on my plans and make them public and win? Because they are corporatists, just like the right wing. Why didn't the neighboring police forces from other cities offer their help? And if they did, why wasn't it in the news? Carson, Watts, Long Beach, Bel Air, Malibu, Beverly Hills, Englewood, Long Beach, Pomona, Pasadena, Claremont, Ontario, Colton, San Fernando Valley, San Bernardino, Inland Empire, Lawndale, and even San Diego and more. They talk about police, point number 10, they talk about police on campuses and protecting the children, okay, and obviously there are white supremacist overtones. Whenever you see them trying to reinforce their sort of boarding school, Freemason, politician mentality, police officers, teachers, they're kind of white supremacist kind of club, if you will. They're types. Freemasons really embody them because quite often they are teachers. They are, lawyers and doctors and police officers. And they have this certain kind of, civilization argument that they try to express. And the argument isn't really civilization. The argument is unfair, condescending, white and whitewashed, LGBT washed, Jew and Jewish washed, oppressor in suits kind of thinking. Okay? If you need another point of reference, think about the military. Think about back in the day when they wore wigs. In fact, in some places, like in the UK, I believe it is, they still wear wigs, at least quite often, in their courtrooms. They're still pushing that colonial wig-wearing mentality. And the word uniform and the word uniformity are connected. So they don't believe that people who want to be themselves, who want to find themselves, they don't believe that they're allowed to have rights. They think everybody should be within the boundaries of seeming inferior to pedophiles and their allies. Okay? See, the churches with their uniformity, right? The priest outfits in the Catholic Church quite often are similar to the outfit of a chef. And we see that those kind of LGBT, kind of Greco-Roman society crafts, those fraternities, that kind of way about them is key in all this. That way has failed Americans every step of the way in American history. Every once in a while they did something a little bit more decent than, the other politicians, like freed the slaves, what have you, if you want to call it being freed. But they never actually did something great ever. And this country has always been a very bad place to be because they were sabotaging the rest of the world. So if you want to be more guilty than any other country in the world, damn near, where do you go, right? You go to Israel, you go to America, you go to the UK, right? These are the main kind of centers of corruption in the world. And there's China and there's Russia. Okay. They all operate within the boundaries of trying to unfairly control people, which is why the economy is so bad for the bottom 60% or so of Americans. Now, it's interesting. You might say it's the bottom 66 and 2/3, which goes back to the mark of the beast, right? Where the privileged class likes to pretend everyone else is, a savage or something. And they like to pretend that they worked hard for their money and so on and so forth. Now, sometimes they did work hard, but they still exploited people. If you are, a hard-working teacher and you're also a bank robber, is it as simple as you worked hard for your money? No. And so it is with every job. You might work hard as, a CEO. But if your practices are evil, if you're exploiting the labor force, it's nothing to be proud of. So they've been working hard for the devil the whole time, so to speak, for nothing else. The positions they have in a mostly white state already allow for a lot of opportunities to get dates, etc., but they feel like it's not enough for them. They want to completely trample the bottom 60%, 66 and 2/3, what have you, financially speaking. When you look at the commonalities of the groups I just named, you see that they are all disassociated and they practice propaganda and theater arts while people suffer. As you can imagine, many of them want to silence me. However, my plans are good for everyone, including them. Only a small percentage of people who are fanatically toxic, jealous, petty, unreasonable, and destructive, etc., want to prevent my plans from coming into being. Now again, when I make these plans, they're not my plan A. Plan A is that everyone acts like a complete bitch and they go to fucking hell. Okay? And they go to hell worse than they otherwise would go. That is what I expect to happen no matter what anyone does, because I know people very well. They are fucking retarded. They have already made it so that it is extremely insane to reproduce. Okay? No one should ever have kids ever again. That's how much they messed up. These are complete idiots we're talking about here. Dumb frat people, racist LGBT people, fanatic cult people who disassociate, just so dumb. Satanists, mockers, just scoffers, just fucking idiots, just everywhere. And you got these arrogant rich people with their crests and their suits, and they try to look better than everyone else, and they drive fancy cars and go to fancy restaurants and live on estates. They are such horrible people. The genes that allow someone to be like that and to suck the blood of everyone else and pretend they're superior because they're sabotaging the way other people look and talk, I mean, those are bad genes. I promise you, those are bad genes. When one wraps around their minds the fact that the top 50% financially have 162 trillion assets in liquid wealth, they know for sure that the 37 trillion debt does not mean that we magically shouldn't pass my plans. If anything, they move too slow and are made that way because greedy people are more likely to agree, and we need to take steps in the right direction, and sometimes you have to take small steps. Also, a good economist knows that one must move with caution, and they must consider the financial sabotage of the bitter and unhappy rich, while they outmaneuver the bitter and unhappy rich with the masses and any more reasonable rich people. So I hope to work with everyone, including the groups I named, to bring a sound economy into being in the United States of America and beyond. Point number 11. Former mayor of New York, Cuomo, makes mental health arguments and puts out the number of a hotline. Again, the politicians play the sick game. Point number 12. Graduation ceremonies are taking place, and this connects to the college incidents and speeches. Okay, so they bring up that there's these graduation ceremonies taking place. Their schools are threatened. They talked about ICE using churches and elementary schools as staging grounds. So they're trying to reinforce the main problem historically in American history, which is what you might call the center in politics, right? They created the radical right and left to try to force people toward the center to pretend like that is, better. These are sick people who like to say things like, isn't it better that way? And say dumb fucking shit. They're obnoxious people. Let me try to say it more like them. They say it like, isn't it just better that way? Okay, they say it like, it is fucking retarded. We are talking dumbasses. We are talking cheesy, corny, shallow motherfuckers. Dumb. Point number 12. Okay, we went over that. Point number 13. ICE raids took place in places like Boyle Heights, Pico Union, Cypress Park, MacArthur Park, and more. They accuse ICE of terrorism, intimidation, and fear-mongering. And of course, they're right about that. Point number 14. So CBN, which is a channel on YouTube, they recently said there's been massive conversions in America. And one claims that they're quoting someone who says that God was there. God wasn't there. You're worshiping the devil. God commands the churches to rally and obey God through me. They're not going to do that because they're Satanists. Can they even start to present a counter-argument? No. Because not only they're wrong, their argument looks dumber than hell because it is compared to mine. And so they're tail tucked in the spirit of satanic cowardice, hiding and shivering on their blanket instead of manning up at the most important time in history. Thus, they don't have a warrior spirit in their church. And they have lots of soldiers and police officers there, if it puts into perspective. Point number 15. They make the foolish argument that Christians in Nigeria will be killed more if I don't do what they say. Now keep in mind, 189,000 people die every day in the world. My kingdom is not of this world. I'm biracial. They're so racist that they don't realize why it's stupid to threaten Jesus. Okay? Look at the Bible, right? Christ not only knew that people who took his side or whatever was going to be persecuted in the story, right? They were going to be persecuted in the story. He said it to him. He said, no servant can be greater. They persecuted me, they'll persecute you. And you see in Matthew 24, it says you'll be put to death, you'll be flogged. Matthew 10, what have you. So you get these sniveling betas, these Simpson punks, these weirdos, people on the spectrum of autism. You get these cult homosexuals. You get these straight guys trying to, who let themselves get sexually abused by gays and cults, trying to get the attractive female. You get these sick, cowardly, don't understand why they're here on this planet at all, just dumbasses, okay? And they think it's smart to threaten God and his son, because when you threaten the son of God, you're threatening God, okay? You're like, look, you better, because this is, I'm God's son, I'm not a regular human being, okay? God sent me here because he knew I was going to do this work, so that the true mind behind me is God. So they're trying to influence God's decision by threatening the flesh of people he created. You know how stupid that is. When you get these just fucking punks, it's painful to see people be so far from masculinity, be so far from being an adult, just pussies. Just fucking pussies. Point number 16. 700 Marines were said to be deployed. Eventually they have 2,000 or so boots on the ground. Point number 17. In San Francisco, there's said to be 150 arrests so far. Why was it so easy for them to arrest people there, but not so much in Los Angeles? Something funny there. Point number 15. The rubber bullets, right? An English journalist, they might have messed up that on the news, but I'm pretty sure they said an English journalist got hit. Flashbangs hit a Fox Crew News. Also, an Australian reporter was shot with a rubber bullet, and one of them had a rubber bullet lodged in their thigh. Point number 16. Trump said that Bass and Newscum were ungrateful and useless and so on and so forth, and that they should thank him and that they're worthless, right? So you get this kind of rhetoric going back and forth. Again, they're trying to make it, people want to return to like the 90s, or the 80s, where when crack hit, okay, or maybe 9/11, right? When, all that money was wasted on these useless wars. Never in all of American history has there been a sane moment in history. Right? All the communists in the 60s, all the rape and all the sex cults and the drugs, that was a stupid time in history. They made superficial advancements. I mean, they did, do things like pass civil rights acts and so on and so forth. Martin Luther King was killed in 68, right? I think in 65, Malcolm X was killed. I mean, so we're looking at this kind of situation where They've been dumb, dumb, and dumb the whole time. Just evil scum, frats everywhere, morons everywhere, rockers everywhere, rappers with no higher cause, corny people everywhere, just stupid fucks, jocks, just idiots. Even the word jock sounds like a dumb fuck. You just got dumbasses everywhere, goths and emos and weebles and K-pop, right? No offense to anybody, but when you look at this as a mature person, trying to get people to do the right thing while people are starving all over the world and you're living in the wealthiest country in the world, you can't help but have a certain resentment for people's apathy, their indifference, their refusal to man up and do what's right. Okay, point number 20. We look at the term demonstration, right? Demonstration and protest, right? And we look at it, how does it playing out? The wordplay is revealed in the pattern that we see. Do people who worship the devil kind of control organizations, right? The mob historically with burning the saint, right? All their evil and illegal activities. Okay, politicians, corporations with their evil and illegal activities and satanic cults, yes. So when we see these demonstrations come into being, they're shunning those who go astray. Is that what's happened to me? Yes. I haven't had a date since early 2018, okay? And it's now 2025. So that's over 7 years. We're going on 8 years. Okay, I'm shunned. Okay, so we go back to 2017, for example. I was at the beginning of 2017, I was 35, and by the end of the year, I turned 36. So I've been shunned, okay, since I was 35 years old. They're doing the right thing. Women decided they're going to date the oppressor instead of me and shun me, try to get me to settle, so on and so forth. Even the word settle is adverse, right? Set versus horse, right? Settle, right? The Satan versus the Son of God, the Christos, the Anointed, the King of Kings. They got these gays trying to harass me, sexually harass me. I've been sexually harassed by gays to the extreme. They even use technology. It's just very sick. One of the main things the Democratic Party should address, and they're not even lifting a finger to, that's what made a lot of people vote right, because they know that the Republicans, as their stated argument, are a less LGBT-friendly party, and LGBT people have been turning people out in record numbers in recent years. Record number. It is so sickening. I'm not saying every LGBT person approves of it, but the fact that no one is trying hard to stop them is so sick. You just see these politicians tail tucked. They may as well be bending the kids over for them. They may as well be coercing the immigrants with them. No care whatsoever. No care. Then they organize to harass me, okay? While people are getting raped and turned out and coerced into being gay, being sex-extorted by gays all over the country. People are bending over to keep their job. If you don't know that's happening, you're crazy. The LGBT community wants to go point by point on this issue. We see an overwhelming amount of evidence. I'm not saying that the statistics are going to show that that's what the case, but we see an overwhelming amount of evidence, okay? For example, if you went to a ghetto where you didn't know the crime rate was, what the crime rate was, say in Dallas or Houston or Cleveland, would you need the fucking statistics to see the signs of the general crimes there? And so it is with people being turned out. When you're someone as familiar with the streets and with life as I am, who's been here for 43, I'm going to be 44 this year. If I'm still alive, I probably won't be a story for another day. And you see people start to do something that they were 100% opposed to before. They used to say things like, no homo. All of a sudden, everyone's got red lipstick. They're effeminate. Titties are flapping everywhere. Male and female pack, like male packs, female tits. Everyone just looking like they're getting ready to transform into a gay parade member. They're just slowly transforming or something. People are being fucking turned out. You think it's only female, people who get raped on the way here, female immigrants? Guys are also getting raped. Excuse the background noise. Some stupid squirrel. Hey, squirrel, go away. Okay, so guys are also getting raped. You can't make this up. And so you see these guys come here, and sometimes they're nice gentlemen, what have you. I'm not saying they're nice. I'm not saying they're not nice. I'm not saying you should hold it against them. But they're being raped like people are raped in juvenile hall, in the churches, in the Boy Scouts, in prisons. People are being turned out in Hollywood, and in various cults, and Freemasonic. Why do you think they wear an apron? Because they are, as they call it, sweet. They're rainbow, they're pink. You see people wearing pink all the time everywhere. They're not in solidarity with the LGBT community. Where's the commercials? Hey, be in solidarity with the LGBT community and wear pink. Why all of a sudden? Because they're in some fucking cult or social club where people are getting fucked in the ass and being threatened with being targeted if they don't go along with it. It is fucking sick. The people and the LGBT community needs to come out and say, look, that's what's going on and we don't approve. When you don't do that, you're like the Nazis that didn't do that. You know what Nazis are called who don't oppose the other Nazis? They're called Nazis. Anyway. So there's an MLK quote I came across when I was watching this video. It's like an hour long, almost done with it, where there's politicians speaking out, a bunch of propaganda. Sometimes they say things that are interesting, but it's a bunch of propaganda designed to have certain psychological moments and a bunch of corniness, which is kind of white culture in general. No offense to anyone. So the MLK Jr. quote goes like this: true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. And therefore, after my flesh dies, there will be no possibility for even a moment of true peace on this planet. Because when you've bred to be evil for thousands of years, you've screened out the last possible redeemer. Okay? No true justice exists. Okay, I just want to really quickly reiterate what I said before. No offense to the LGBT community or any other community other than the offense that God intended. And, we see the evidence, right? That people come here and they're already turned out quite often. And America might be the most turned out country in the world. It's a huge place for people being turned out. Okay? So in foreign countries, they come at these people, right? They come at these people like wolves. And there's straight people doing it, and there's gay people doing it. And if you were to gather a bunch of articles about child rape abroad, by the rape of children in underdeveloped nations by people from developed nations in churches and groups, if you were to look into the statistics of child rape, right? 1 in 4 little boys is sexually molested before age 18 or something like that. It's 1 in 4 little girls and 1 in 6 little boys, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we know this is a huge problem, and we know it's disproportionately LGBT, and we know the churches have been doing it for a long time. You look at France, you look at the history, thousands of thousands, hundreds of thousands of children have been molested by church staff. Okay, in the last couple hundred years, thousands and hundreds of thousands of them all over the world. In France alone, it was like 300,000 within like a 100-year period or something. I think it was by the Catholic Church alone, but it's also Protestants. It's this huge epidemic, and in other countries they approach them in various groups. A lot of evidence suggests that the Freemasons are very involved in it. Okay, but I cannot definitively show you proof that there's a massive Masonic child molestation conspiracy, but there's a lot of evidence there. And it's also in the grooming. We see the signs. Like if someone comes out looking perfectly like a Blood or a Crip, you know that someone laced them in the, with game. And you think about lacing your shoes, right? You got to kind of, quite often people bend over to lace their shoes. So that term comes from the kind of child molestation, cults in societies, right? Who made the gangs in the first place. And not every gang member, approves of it. I don't know how it breaks down. I don't think anyone can even get statistics on it because that's the nature of the topic. But, to be quote unquote laced with game, right? The word game is mage scrambled. And look at the Pope, how he looks like a mage. And this quite often you see that with religious figures, their hats, their outfits, what have you. To be laced with game properly, as they say, and it disgusts me. I don't approve it all. I don't think people should learn the game. They should analyze society and but they shouldn't learn it from the inside. But to be laced with game properly, people bend over, right? As they say, they're bootlickers. They bend over for them, right? They're cocksuckers, okay? They're brown nosers. They're kissing their ass. Why of all places we're kissing their ass? Why not their feet? The soles of their feet. Why is it their ass? Because there's so much homosexual kind of wordplay in society, because the Western system is an LGBT system. And it's also a sewer system, which goes back to, I don't want to discuss anybody, it goes back to anal sex, right? Analysis, the word anal in the word analysis. And I know that a lot of LGBT people are disgusted by it too, and they're terrorized, and it's sad. A lot of these people got turned out, and they don't want to admit to themselves they don't know what to do, because the world is such a cruel place, such a cruel, cruel place. That's why I tell people, there's many reasons I tell people, don't reproduce, okay? It's cruel to reproduce. It's a cruel, cruel planet. It's a very cruel planet. And so I think about these people being taken advantage of before they even get here, and they go on this long journey, and you're raping them, and you're abusing them, and you're charging them all this money, and you arrogant rich people exploiting them when they get here, exploiting them from abroad. You broke down their nation, say, hey, don't come here because we exploited your nation and made you desperate, because we want you to come here groveling even more than you are when you're in your home countries. No offense to anybody, but that's the plan for them. Whether they do that or not, we'll say. Okay, that's the fucking plan for them. That's the blueprint. These are sick people, deranged, depraved, just sniveling, depraved scum. And quite often, I used to go through the motions when I trained martial arts of beating the shit out of these people, beating the fucking devil shit out of them. And I'm not saying you should. I'm not trying to inspire hatred or anger here. I'm trying to put in perspective. Peaceful protests are the way I'm trying to put. This is a sick planet. Hell and hell. This is a very sick. People are worshiping the fucking devil like a heavy metalhead and being self-destructive. And they're getting weird tattoos. And so remember when I got some tattoos. I have tattoos, right? I was under heavy mind control at the time, and I got weirder tattoos than I otherwise would have. I had some kind of silly idea. And so I go way out of my way to make sure that everything's on the up and up, right? And if I was in charge, I'd have a moral council. We review everything very carefully and make sure that it is very pinpointed, okay? But I've made minor mistakes over the years, not major mistakes. And in a sense, my tattoos are a badge of honor, showing the years of persecution. They tell my life story of how these people try to play me out using tattoos, how they, and my body is riddled with signs that they have cheated me, like Christ in the Bible, but I'm Christ in real life. The crown of thorns, leaving scars and marks. Okay, the being flogged, being crucified, right? And he said when Christ is said to come back, he's said to have the marks of crucifixion still. They're like a badge of honor. But anyway, I wanted to straighten that out here again. Can I factually prove with statistics that there's a massive rape culture out there? Well, let's look at this thing carefully. We don't know who's fabricating what. For all we know, every statistic we've read in our life has been made up. We don't know. So I can't definitively prove anything with statistics because people lie about these things. But when we look at the evidence, when we look at people's faces, when we look at the stories, when we think about people we've interacted with, and I've interacted with thousands and thousands of people in my life because I used to go on the internet like every day for hours before they started censoring me. That's part of why they censor me and minimize my discussions, because they know I was finding out a lot of stuff and I was speaking on it. When I look at the overwhelming amount of evidence that is there, the statistics that I cite must be true or ballpark. They are turning people out, and they're turning people out with relative impunity. And every once in a while they throw some Epstein or some Weinstein or some Cosby under the bus. And these guys tend to not look like, some quote-unquote good-looking English person or something in a nice suit, right? Notice when they threw Prince Andrew under the bus, he was like the scruffiest of the English royals, okay? Because that's part of their sick game. It's a breeding game. It's a sick fuck, like they breed dogs and horses. They breeding fucking people. So yes. So look at my son now. Yes, he's quite a handsome young lad, isn't he? Why, they're sabotaging motherfuckers.